Director of Development for Antaeus. And a few weeks ago, when we were talking about what would be a fun recipe project for May, we thought a Kentucky Derby themed mint julep brownie would be really great. Now that May is here, it turns out there is no Kentucky Derby this year, but that's no reason you can't still make yourself brownies at home. It's not cakey and it's not too fudgy, it's really chewy and kind of cookie-like, and I think it's super tasty. And I think that's it, so let's get started. Five tablespoons of unsalted butter. You'll add those to a microwave safe dish and then pour in a cup and a half of granulated white sugar, and then you'll put that in the microwave for about 1 minute. For the eggs, you'll use 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk, and I like to whisk the eggs together until they are fully combined before we add in the other ingredients. So here's the butter and sugar, stir that to make sure it's pretty well combined, and then you can pour in the eggs. Then you'll want to whisk those together. And next we'll add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla and then 2 tablespoons of bourbon, which, by the way, the alcohol does not actually cook out when you bake it, so if you don't want the alcohol in there, go ahead and leave it out. Combine that, and then our last wet ingredient is going to be 1/3 cup of vegetable oil. We use the vegetable oil and the butter because the saturated and unsaturated fats do different things, and that's part of how you get the texture of this recipe. Okay, now on to the dry ingredients. We'll start with 3/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, which I like to sift to make sure there aren't any lumps. Add to that 1/2 cup of white flour, also sifted. And then we'll add 1/8 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Combine those. And then we can pour the dry ingredients into the wet. And you'll want to stir this really thoroughly, even for a couple of minutes after it's combined, and that's part of what helps it get its sort of firm, chewy texture. Then we'll add in 3/4 cup of chocolate chips. In this case, I used mini chocolate chips that were semi-sweet, but you can use any kind you like. We'll fold those in with a spatula, and then for the pan, I would normally use parchment paper. I could only get tinfoil right now, so we'll spray that with nonstick cooking spray to try to make it a little less sticky. And then we'll pour in the batter, making sure that it's nice and even through the pan. I like to add a little bit of sugar to the top just to get that extra crispy, glossy top to the brownies. Then we'll put those in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll move on to making the topping. So we use a cup of heavy cream, 3 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Then you'll add in 1 teaspoon of mint oil. And I chose to use 1 tablespoon of bourbon, but if you want a stronger flavor, you could add 2. Then you'll want to whip those for a couple of minutes until they are starting to be firm but not too stiff. You can just basically put it on your brownies with a spoon, but as you'll see, I put it in a piping bag just because I was having fun with it. When the brownies come out of the oven, you'll want to let them rest in the pan for an hour before you cut. Then you can go ahead and serve and enjoy. Happy social distancing Kentucky Derby, everybody. Hope to see you soon.